Hello and welcome to our webinar today. Thanks for joining us. We're going to get things started in just a minute. Glad you're here, and I'm glad to be here as well. Got here our list of upcoming webinars. If you want to save the date, all of these are noon Eastern time. You can sign up for any one of these at axiapr.com/webinars. We also have about a dozen on-demand webinars available at that address as well. So next month, we'll be talking about improving your social media engagement. The following month, we'll talk about search and optimization. And then after that, we'll talk about what is autocomplete SEO, unique SEO tactic for search boxes. You can learn more about that at axiapr.com/autocomplete. And then in September, we will be covering blogging as a unique SEO powerhouse tactic that you can use. The other thing I want to share with you before we get started is if you go to axiapr.com/AMA, you can ask us anything there and we'll get back to you with an answer, or you can reply anonymously. And that'll give us good content for future episodes of On Top of PR, our podcast, or as part of our monthly webinar content that we're producing. So if you would put your name and location in the chat, let us know where you're connecting from and what you're hoping to accomplish during our time together today. Speaking of our time together today, we're covering media relations for earned media coverage as part of our Webinar Wednesdays series. We want to unlock the power of expertise to drive visibility, credibility, and trust. So again, welcome. We're glad you're here. Please introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us where you're located and what you're hoping to accomplish today. That'll help us make sure the presentation is interactive and make sure you receive the value that you're looking from our time together today. So ultimately for us, our goal is to help you get more money out of your PR investment, whether you're attending this webinar from corporate side and you're doing it in-house. Perhaps you work at an agency today, or perhaps you're just exploring whether or not PR is a good move for your organization. One of the key things I would love to emphasize to you, our audience, is that media relations is a very prominent part of public relations, but it is not the only part of PR. And that's certainly important for you to keep in mind. PR is so much more than simply just earned media, which is what commonly it's affiliated with or identified as, especially among corporate executives, business owners, and people who work in marketing. Real quick, just a little bit about me. I am your presenter today. The World Communication Forum named me the top PR leader in North America. I'm a trusted advisor to some of America's most admired and fastest growing organizations. I'm a professional public speaker, published author, podcaster, and entrepreneur. And Forbes magazine named Axia among America's best PR agencies. So again, here's our upcoming webinars. You can certainly check out that QR code real quick if you want to see those, or just go to axiapr.com/webinars to see both our on-demand and upcoming episodes. So what exactly is earned media or earned media coverage? Because what we're talking about today is media relations for the pursuit of or trying to earn media coverage. So earned media is coverage you receive through relationships, reputation, and compelling storytelling rather than paid placements. So instead of advertising, you are actually inserting your brand or your executive or yourself or your organization within the content. And people are tuning in to consume media because they want to learn something, they want to benefit in some way. And so instead of being disruptive like ads, you're being integrated into the content itself. So, I often say no one tunes into media to see who's advertising or to look for ads. They're tuning in to media to be entertained, informed, educated, and maybe even challenged. And the key points is it's about what others say about you, which is the most credible form of media. This includes news stories, features, quotes, submissions, many ways to categorize media coverage. And ultimately, good PR requires consistent effort and offers long-term brand benefits. So unlike an advertisement that you see today and then it's gone, uh, news coverage will stay organic. It'll stay loading in search engines. It'll be available for many years. And that's one of the key benefits of earned media coverage as opposed to advertising. So earned media allows you to get featured in news stories, whether that's print, radio, TV, broadcast, or excuse me, podcast or video cast platforms. Any way that's kind of it's owned by a third party and they're letting you appear on their platform is often earned media. Here's some examples of some of the earned media coverage and that I've received in the last 30 days as an expert trusted advisor to corporations. Let's talk for just a minute about paid versus earned versus shared versus owned. Some of you might have heard of PESO, a very common acronym in the industry. It's important to understand the media mix, which is critical for successful PR strategies. So paid media really is not a form of traditional PR by any means. It's mostly advertising, which is paid media to have a sponsored place or advertorial content appear. Advertorial, if you're not familiar with that term, just means it looks like editorial content, but it was actually paid for. Ethically, that type of content should always be listed as and mentioned, referenced as being paid content. It's not always the case, but that would be the best practice. And then earned media, of course, is what we're talking about today. And shared media is also known as social media or user-generated content. And owned media is your website, your blog, your newsletters, your content that you own. This could be videos, this could be a lot of other formats, but it's something that you own. You decide to create it, you went out and created it, and now you own it forever versus paid media comes and goes. You have to pay to be part of it. It does have an expiration. It might appear, for a series of time and then it goes away. Or if it's a print publication, someone might throw it out, or you might run an ad for a month or a week and then it's no longer there. Shared media, of course, is content that you're sharing on somebody else's platform like Facebook, Wikipedia, TikTok, etc. So you're there until they ban you. Your content stays on there till that website closes. And owned media is something you own. It'll never go down or go away unless you don't pay your bill or you shut down your website or something like that. So to give credit where credit's due, Don Bartholomew first created the acronym PESO. So that's where we get that term PESO from today. It doesn't have anything to do with Mexican currency. Why you should invest in earned media. So first of all, I'll show you examples later, but there's no more credible way to build your brand than through other people telling your story for you. And the way to do that is to build credibility and trust. But ultimately, people think of media coverage, they think of the visibility that it creates. And this also enhances search and optimization and online visibility overall, which now in the days of generative AI is using search engine optimized content and online content to feed the generative AI bots. And so ultimately, what we have is, answer engine optimization, AEO, which is basically the way you optimize for generative AI tools. And if you're interested in learning more about that, I'd be very open to talking to you about that. I just posted recently on LinkedIn, so comment on my recent post, and I would love to connect with you and talk to you more about AEO. I think we'll probably be doing some sort of webinar or podcast episode in the near term about that. So, and then overall, your investment, earned media is cost effective, long lasting, and again, doesn't require an ad spend. And then it strengthens your brand authority, your trust in the marketplace, and your reputation. So just some factoids about PR. If you need these to share with your leadership team or to help increase your current internal or external budget for outside or inside PR services, PR is the most effective way to build brand, gain credibility, earn media coverage, and best for marketing dollar spent. This is according to McBain Associates research. And then we got a lot of research from Starch here. A news story about a product or service has 6 times the visibility and 3 times the credibility of a same size advertisement. So that's factoring in, like, if a story is a quarter page in a print publication or a 30-second mention on TV news, an ad of that same size is going to deliver 1/6 the visibility and 1/3 the credibility of that same content. And that's why earned media is so coveted and so highly desired and desirable. It's because it really stands out from advertising. And unlike advertising, you actually have to earn it, which is the key word there in earned media. Starts research also says that about 90% of Americans say learning about a company through news coverage is more influential and credible than advertising. And according to Nielsen, 92% of consumers say they trust earned media, while only about half trust paid media or advertising. And then earned media lifted brand familiarity 88% more than branded content and 50% more than user reviews, which is very interesting because I know many companies are worried about their online reviews. Personally, I use online reviews to consider whether or not to buy from a company, but I certainly have to become aware of them first. And I don't generally become aware of them based on their user reviews. And I'm sure that's the same behavior you experience as well as a consumer in the marketplace. Nielsen also tells us that 67% of consumers agree that an endorsement from an unbiased expert makes them more likely to consider purchasing. And that unbiased expert could be an influencer, and an influencer, the original influencers were often media personalities or people who are well known and trusted in the space that they cover. And just going back to this point for one moment, one side effect that's really beneficial about earned media is the consumers in the marketplace, whether they're business consumers or consumer consumers in the marketplace. We're all consumers. So whether they're business consumers or customers consuming in the marketplace, everyone is at some point buying in the marketplace. And what most people don't understand is that most people perceive that the expert being quoted or featured or interviewed for a story, they assume that the media worked hard to find the best person possible, the best person anywhere who could comment on this particular topic or story. But the truth is, as people who work in PR and work in media know, it's often the expert that was most available and accessible and helpful and maybe even trusted over the long haul. But in no way have they gone through the effort of verifying every single person's credentials and only working with the most credentialed and qualified individual. 71% of business owners say their marketing dollars are best spent on PR. That's according to Inc. magazine. And earned media is the most credible since it's created and distributed by independent third parties. That's, again, according to Nielsen. So ultimately, the question is, what do journalists want? What do we do to have more success in getting earned media coverage? It really comes down to two things. Understanding that journalists are looking for something that aligns with their audience. So if you think about it, topically speaking, or subject matter, right? Every news outlet you can think of covers a certain type of topic. It may include that topic for a industry trade or a specific what do you call that? A specific vertical. So it might cover construction, it might cover real estate, it might cover investing, it might cover engineering or technology. And then the other thing is geography, right? If it's a general subject matter, is the geography local? Is it hyper local to a specific community or a specific metropolitan area? Maybe it's specific to a state or a U.S. region. Maybe it's national or international. So the point is, journalists are looking for stories that matter to the topic or subject matter they cover, and they're making sure that it has impact or relevance to the geographic audience or the geography that is following their content. So the best way to describe that is, if there's going to be a small blueberry festival in a small town that's hard to get to, unless there's something really special about that festival I'm just going to make this up, that happens to be in Southwest Georgia, it's probably not going to attract the attention of the New York Times even less likely to attract the attention of the Wall Street Journal, probably. And so it has to do with prominence and geography. So unless this festival has national impact or is doing something very unique at a national level, odds are unlikely that people will be interested in that festival. So subject matter, does the pitch align with the journalist area of expertise, coverage, current coverage focus, or audience interest? I covered that already a little bit. And then geography, is the story relevant to the journalist coverage area or audience? Is it local, regional, national, global reach? Can significantly impact interest. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm happy to answer those live and in real time. You want to avoid being overly promotional or lacking a clear newsworthy angle. So the way to do that is to not be shameless self-promoting when you contact the journalist, and instead talk to the journalist about what or why this is interesting to their audience, why it matters, and how you want them to cover it, or what you want them to do with this information. It absolutely is not about being overly promotional. It's absolutely not lacking a clear newsworthy angle. And we're going to get into newsworthy angles in just a second. So how to pitch the media? You want to personalize the pitch. You want to know the journalist's past work and their interests. You want to understand the beat that this journalist writes for or covers or features. You would not go to an engineering magazine to talk about heart surgery. You would not go to a muscle and fitness magazine or a motorcycle magazine to talk about daycare solutions. And so I think it sounds like common sense, but so many people miss the point of that it's got to be interesting and relevant to the audience, not just what your CEO would like. So the next thing is you want to write the hook. Grab attention within the first 2 to 3 sentences, and then you want to craft the subject line. Most people overlook the subject line. But what you have to think about is the subject line is what determines whether or not your pitch gets open. The subject line and the content of your pitch actually determine whether or not you have your inbox optimized, meaning inbox optimized is one of the undervalued, underappreciated ways of getting media coverage, because a journalist might not think to cover your insurance expert on in April, but come June, they may have a topic that they need to cover. And they're like, who is that person that was pitching me, that insurance person? So they go in their inbox, just like a search engine, and they start searching for the keywords to try to get your story, your pitch to come back up so they can take advantage of it. Common mistakes to avoid: sending generic copy paste emails. I, as a podcaster and a blogger and a contributor to national business magazines, on the regular, I'm receiving pitches and they're really bad. I did a podcast episode where I actually dissect many of the bad pitches that I receive, and I walk through what some of the issues and challenges are with each. That's an episode of On Top of PR, and I encourage you to check that out. But if you're copying and pasting a pitch into an email, you're probably not taking the right approach. So I would encourage you to do custom pitches. I would encourage you to spend the time investing in that custom pitch, because you really only have like one shot with that particular pitch to get it across the finish line and to have it stand out. And if you sent it to 100 people, they're just going to be able to detect it. One of my tips or techniques is to really visualize that person, what they look like, how they interact, what they write about, what they like to cover, and really just immerse myself in writing it to them specifically and thinking about them as I'm writing it. I would rather see you send out 10 pitches over a period of a day or two that are very targeted to a specific individual, as opposed to a broadcast or broad-reaching generic email pitch. The other mistake I see, and this is probably the top one for me, is pitching to the wrong journalist. So again, I cover topics related to public relations, and I can't tell you how many times I get pitched to cover some charity event, to cover some fundraiser for leukemia, and it's just not within the area that I write. Fashion topics and handbag topics. So, what you're really doing is you're wasting your time, wasting their time, and creating a bad reputation for yourself. Oftentimes, if I have the time, I might respond and say, hey, help me understand how you feel or sensed that this would fit into the coverage the type of coverage, the type of content that I produce. Almost always they don't respond, or they respond with, oops, accident, didn't mean to send that to you. Or they say, well, you were on the media list and I just sent it to the media list. I don't want to be rude to anybody, but I want to help them kind of think through critically of their process and their efforts. And candidly, I don't think most people, one, are thinking about it, two, are being conscientious enough to even think through this. So this is important to educate yourself about the right way to do that. And then you don't want to ignore the importance of timing. So, you can't really pitch a journalist that's, live on the air. You shouldn't really pitch a journalist, most traditional media. You shouldn't really pitch them after 3 o'clock because they're usually trying to wrap up the story of the day they're working on at 3 o'clock. And so that's a really bad time. So you also need to understand, the timing, like magazines are writing, traditional print magazines, they do still exist. Let's see. So they're writing articles today for their August or September issue. So a common mistake I see is you go to them, in May, asking them, hey, can you write about this in your June issue? And it's like, well, the June issue is currently being printed as we speak. So you have to understand timing. And the best way to understand it is to just ask, contact the reporter you're interested in working with and ask them about the important, their timing. What's the deadline for us to talk to you about a particular story idea for your September issue? So here's an example of a bad pitch. So the subject line interview request doesn't really pop, doesn't really add value. It is clear though that you're looking for an interview. So it says, hi journalist, I'd love for you to write about my company. We are the best at what we do and have been helping clients for 10 years. I think your audience would love to hear about our latest product update. Also, our CEO wants the story to run on the second Tuesday in June. Let me know if you're interested. Well, first of all, that's nice that that's what your CEO wants, but I guarantee you 9 times out of 10, what your CEO wants has nothing to do with what's going to get covered. The exception is unless you're, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, or someone who can kind of command that timing and those types of exclusive and arrangements, because your client, your CEO, is so prominent that the world will work around their schedule. But 9 times out of 10, your CEO is not that prominent, and so just because they want a story told doesn't mean it's going to be told. Now, a good PR person, a good communicator, will help find newsworthy angles and positions that can integrate their client into those stories. Now, why that's a bad pitch, I covered some of this already, but no real personalization for the outlet's audience, no evidence of research on or about the journalist beat and what they cover. It's relatively promotional without a clear news angle. It's self-serving without a clear audience benefit, and there's no compelling hook or unique insight offered. This sounds so simple when I'm walking you through this, but most of the time, most people don't know how to pitch journalists well, and they often do it out of trying to be helpful, but they don't really have that ability to edit like an editor does and cut through the clutter. And the key thing I would tell you is study the outlet that you're pitching and look for the type of stories that they cover. If you don't see the type of story that you're looking to pitch them, maybe you have a conversation with someone there or a colleague to help you understand how to dissect the sections and the pages or the content within that outlet. So here's an example of what might be a good pitch. I would just call it a better pitch because no pitch should be this generic by any means, right? But the subject is how an industry trend or timely topic is impacting the journalist audience or focus area, right? So you see how we're customizing from the very beginning the subject line. And then again, we're saying, hi, journalist name. I read your recent coverage on related topic and thought you might find this story interesting. And then it jumps right in. A study on relevant industry insights reveals surprising trend about timely topic. And then it goes into more detail. For example, interesting statistic or unique insight. This could be a compelling angle for your audience, especially as we approach upcoming season, event, or milestone. Happy to provide more data or connect you with spokesperson name from company name who recently conducted the research, who has these relevant credentials. Thanks for your time, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Now, later, I'm going to walk through what I think makes a great pitch. This one's off a little bit in my mind because it's lacking, or it has one more paragraph than I would recommend, and a couple other things. It doesn't really have a clear call to action. of what you would like the journalist to do next, and doesn't offer a timeline to make that connection with the expert. But this is a much better pitch than 90% of the pitches that journalists are going to receive. So what was good about it was personalized to the journalist. It focused on a relevant, timely topic that matches the journalist beat, clearly highlights a unique or helpful piece of information, offers a credible source without being promotional. Keyword there, helpful and without being promotional. So again, it's not about you. It's not about your company. It's not about your executive. It's about the audience and what helps the audience. Because here's the thing, journalists and news outlets are in the business of making money. The way they make money is through advertising. The way they get more advertisers and keep more advertisers and grow their advertising fees in their rate card is by having more audience. And the way they have more audience is by being trustworthy in the content that they're providing. I don't know if I'm going to say this or not later, so I'll say it now. I could be the best man in the wedding of the in the editor's wedding, or the producer's wedding, regardless of the outlet they work for. And if the stories I'm pitching to him or her are not on target for what they cover, they will not cover my story. So relationships are important, but a good news story is 10 times more important. A good relationship gets you a foot in the door, but a good newsworthy pitch will get you to the front of the line. So here we go. The best pitches. They've got a great subject line. I'm not sure if I said this earlier, but you should spend as much time perfecting your subject line and your headline as you do the rest of your pitch and the rest of your news release. I'll say that again to make sure everybody heard that. You must spend as much time on your headline and your subject line as you do writing the news release or writing the pitch. So important, because the headline is the first thing they read, and the subject line is the first thing they read, and that makes them decide if they're going to continue to read and engage, or if they're just going to ignore you. My favorite pitches are 3 paragraphs. It is, what is it? Why should you or your audience care? And what do you want me to do? So in other words, I've got this story. This is why it matters. And this is what I'd like you to do. So what is it? This executive, this celebrity is going to be in town on Thursday. This matters because this person has a huge following and then quote their social media following or something like that. People would like to hear from this individual. The call to action is, what do you want them to do? I'd like to set up an interview with them when they first arrive, or right before they leave, or in the before their event, before their speech, after their presentation. Each of these paragraphs should have 1 to 3 sentences at the most. And then there should be how to best reach me, right? So what's the best way for them to reach you if they're interested? Again, keep this to 3 paragraphs at the most, each paragraph with 1 to 3 sentences. And even better if it's 3 sentences total. What do I mean by that? A 3-sentence pitch. A 3-sentence pitch often will sound like a reader. A reader is what a TV or broadcast anchor does when they're reading the news, and they read them almost as headlines. So it's a very short story, and it's 3 sentences. If you can get your pitch to 3 sentences, I guarantee you'll get more consumption of your pitch and ultimately more respect and consideration. One of the biggest mistakes I see people do is they send more than a pitch, because a pitch is just a teaser. You don't need to send 13 attachments, and those attachments are 13-page PDFs, and your original pitch is 3 pages printed out. It's not going to fly. No one has time for that. No one is going to invest that much time in your story. I promise you. I've even seen situations where I have a client who's going on for a 4-minute TV segment, and they start wanting to send this anchor or this reporter or this personality, pages and pages of background information about the company. There's not time for all that to be discussed in 4 minutes. Control your narrative. Only send them what you want them to have, and I'll only send them what they need to know to be able to do a good interview. So again, this goes back to building relationships with journalists, which is ultimately what media relations is all about. And media relations leads to earned media coverage. So you want to be a helpful source. You want to provide valuable insights and data. You want to engage with them on social media. So follow them on social media. Observe what they post about. Share and comment on their work. Be genuine when you comment on their work, and try to say something unique, provocative, and contrarian that not everybody else is saying, other than great story or I love this article. Instead, be a little bit more sophisticated and have some more substance. Tell them what you liked about that article. Tell them what you liked about the style of the reporting that they chose to use. Maybe say you like how you were able to get one of their sources or their quotes to say a certain thing. And then follow up appropriately, respect their time and preferences. So newsrooms are extremely busy places. If you haven't been in one, I would encourage you to take a tour of a newsroom. And just kind of listen in to the phone calls and the conversations. Now, most journalists are able to work remote, or many journalists are able to work remote, so that newsroom experience isn't quite the same as it used to be. But you want to respect your time and theirs by following up appropriately and being respectful and considering how busy their time is. And I don't have the statistics in front of me, but there are overwhelming statistics that say for every one story a journalist writes, they're being pitched at least 10 and often 100 others. So keep in mind just how busy journalists are and what you've got to do to stand out. The way to stand out is to follow these tips, hire an expert, and let that expert be your guide. You want to avoid being pushy or overly persistent. It's best to follow up with additional helpful information. Again, don't dump everything on them at once. Give them bite-sized snacks or teasers about your story to build their interest over time if they didn't say yes at first. Don't just follow up and say, hey, I want to make sure you saw my pitch. Hey, I want to make sure you got my news release. Hey, I want to make sure you're still considering this story. You can say that in a different way by saying, hey, in addition to the information I shared with you before, I can also line up this expert or this celebrity or this human interest story to complement what I've already put in front of you. Or, hey, I found out some new information that I thought might be helpful. Now, you might have had that information all along, but what you're really trying to do is just add additional benefit and additional content to help move your story to the finish line. And I kind of alluded to this already, but remember, a pitch is a teaser or an introduction. It is not a data dump. It is not giving them the entire story all at once. Let them unpack the story slowly. Let them eat in bites. Don't just dump it all over them, because you don't need to send more than a few sentences to start a conversation. And again, I think that's the key part. A media pitch is a teaser, an introduction, a conversation. It's not a complete story. Unless you've got a really good relationship with the reporter, they already know, like, and trust you and or your company and client, it's unlikely that they're going to just run a story just because you dumped it in their lap. At Axia, we have a unique document improvement process for earned media coverage. My team and I have spoken about this globally to fellow public relations practitioners. This is actually our 18-step version. We have a revised version now that's 20 steps. You can check that out on our website. I won't walk you through all of these because on our website, we do that in detail, including a video. But I will just kind of highlight that not only do we have a process, and I find most agencies and most PR departments do not, but we've also visualized it and we also openly share it to advance and give back to the profession. A little break here. Our next webinar is going to be June 4th, Improving Your Social Media Engagement. It'll be at noon on Eastern Time on June 4th. I hope you'll tune in and join us there, where we'll talk about improving your social media engagement. I don't know anyone who's 100% thrilled with their current social media, but I will give you some of the best practices we've seen as an agency to improve your social media. So getting back to this topic, measuring earned media success. Measuring your results will help refine your strategy, what's working, what's not. If you're pitching the same outlet and they're not picking it up, you might want to ask yourself why. And trust me, it's oftentimes going to be you and not them, but sometimes it is just them. Maybe they just don't like your past efforts, or you've rubbed them the wrong way, or they don't like and trust your company. The best way to fix that is to try to build a relationship, get to know them personally, bring them stories, bring them value that has nothing to do with you or your company or your client. Instead, just simply try to build a relationship the old-fashioned way. Key outputs metrics here to consider is the number of placements and mentions, the share of voice and the brand sentiment, backlink quality and referral traffic, impact on brand awareness, and perhaps sales if that's one of the outcomes that you're measuring. There's more sophisticated ways to measure public relations. We're going to get to that in an upcoming webinar. Stay tuned for that. Again, if you have questions, put them in the chat. We would be happy to take a look and answer any questions that you might have. The next thing I want to talk about is how to report. So at Axia, we do weekly activities reports, monthly metric reports, quarterly results, and an annual executive summary. Our weekly reports consist of like a flash report that's sent via email on Friday afternoons or Monday mornings. It says, here's what we've accomplished for you this week. Here's what we're working on next week. And here are the things we need to continue our momentum and success. A monthly metrics report is more of tracking our progress towards hitting our KPIs. We typically recommend measuring KPIs on a quarterly basis because it gives you a broader range of data. And some months and some seasons are slower where your numbers might look different. So on a monthly basis, we're typically tracking our progress towards reaching our quarterly KPIs. And then on our quarterly results reports, we're very focused on reporting results. And then we do an annual executive summary for your investors, your board, your leadership team, and perhaps your shareholders and employees. Then we kind of have a recommended way that we have set up for our timeline for working with clients. And you can emulate something like this internally with your internal teams, focused on research and planning, implementation, and then results measurement. So let's talk as we're starting to wrap up. What questions do you have for us today? What did we cover that was helpful? What did we not cover that you were hoping to hear about? Let us know in the comments. We'll be happy to address those. While we're waiting on you to submit questions, I want to thank you for joining us. We hope you found this webinar helpful and insightful. If you want, as an attendee, one of the benefits is you have access to do a free strategy session with us. So if you're interested in taking the next step, book a free strategy session to discuss building your organization's earned media coverage. You can do that by simply going to axiapr.com/apply. We'll ask you a few questions, and then there'll be a calendar link to book your free strategy session with us. During that time, we'll ask you about a dozen questions to help kind of uncover who you are, what you do, and who you're trying to reach, and what do you want them to know. In that process, we'll be able to better identify some potential newsworthy angles, outlets that we think are relevant and helpful, not only to you, but ultimately the audience that you're trying to reach, which is the critical component of any PR campaign is who is the target audience and how can we help them? So again, if you have any questions, put them in. I'll be happy to answer them as we continue the webinar here. So while we're waiting on you to submit questions, our upcoming webinars are here on the screen again with the QR code. If you're interested in any one of these, go ahead and sign up and we'll make sure you receive an invite. And if for some reason you don't see a topic here you're interested in, let us know that too. You can do that so in the comments right now, or you can contact us at axiapr.com/AMA as in ask me anything. And in that form, you can request a topic or ask us any question that you have. You can also submit those questions anonymously so that we can give you an opportunity to help you if you're dealing with a certain PR challenge or a struggle. Maybe you have a manager or leader who has unrealistic expectations and you need some help, kind of guiding them, or maybe you're going through a crisis. Maybe you're dealing with a difficult journalist or a difficult situation that you need you have a question to ask about that. We would welcome those questions and happy to help you. So again, you can submit it anonymously. But it helps if you leave your contact information so we can at least give you a direct response. So tell me what was helpful, what was interesting in today's webinar so that we can improve our future productions and offerings to you. And then there's this great episode we did of On Top of PR, which is our podcast that we produce. There's a QR code here. I'd encourage you to scan it. What you should know about earning media coverage. So I think we go through like 10 or 12 things that are really perceptions about earned media coverage that we're correcting. Also setting expectations if you're engaging in a media relations campaign, again, whether that's internal or external, helping you identify some of the myths or challenges that you're going to face as you go through this process. And for us, it's something that we make sure every new client sees before they hire us, to make sure we're fully disclosing to them, and setting expectations properly. Because the last thing you want is for someone to think that, earned media works just like paid media, and then they're disappointed with the experience. So while we're waiting on any more questions that might come in, here are the services that we offer. You'll see we put our services under 3 different buckets of news, social, and web. When it comes to news, we think about earned media coverage, crisis communications management, training your spokespersons to be prepared for news and podcast and media interviews, getting your experts featured on podcast as featured guests for podcast interviews. Speakers Bureau is where we're getting your executives in front of audiences, whether that's industry conferences or other events. Maybe they're doing the keynote or main stage speaking, or perhaps they're doing a breakout or workshop session. It might even be a webinar session where they're presenting through the web. We also help companies enter awards so they can win awards for their leadership, their company, their ethics, their products, their solutions, their creativity, their hiring practices, their corporate giving, etc. And then in the bucket of social media, we're thinking, of course, about social media publishing and content, also improving your online reputation and your online reviews, connecting you with influencers to help attract more customers' interest and awareness. And then under the category of web, we help make sure your website is full of good content that converts and it's mobile friendly. We're generating content that attracts people to your website. We're doing a lot of blogging because we find that blogging is a great way to get more traffic and trust. And then Brandcast, we can help you develop your own company branded podcast or videocast. And then autocomplete SEO is where we get your company's name in the search engine's predictive suggestions. You can take a look at how that works by just going into a search engine and typing in public relations firm or public relations agency. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to see Axios show up as the only recommended brand name to come up there. And if you're interested more about that, I can give you other client examples that are also ranking like that on YouTube, Bing, Google, MSN, DuckDuckGo, Yahoo, etc. And or you can just go to axiapr.com/autocomplete to see more examples there. Okay, last call for any questions if you have, and then we'll wrap this webinar up. A frequently asked question that I get is, can I review the news story before it goes live? And the answer is no. You really can't. Some outlets have a process, especially after they've gotten into trouble with other writers, perhaps having issues with their facts or with their quotes. They may allow you to do what they call a fact check, where they will send you statements from the article or quotes from the article to make sure you weren't misquoted. But honestly, in today's day and age where most people are using AI or other tools to record the conversation, they're really not giving you a chance to review that content. And when they do, again, it's only to fact check and to confirm quotes. It's not to change a quote. It's not to change the direction of the story or anything like that. You can do that with advertising. So if you need that level of control, or your executive requires that level of control, advertising does offer you some limited control, not full control by any means. That's because, you can't guarantee, oftentimes when you do advertising, you can't guarantee where the ad appears. You can control how often it appears and the size of the ad, but that's about it. And sometimes there's even regulation as to what can be said inside the ad. So it's very important to keep that in mind when you're working on it. Okay, we have a question about embargoes. There's things called embargoes, exclusives, and advances. So let me talk to you about that for a minute. So an embargo is when you send a news story to a news outlet or news outlets and you let them know, hey, I'm sending this to you on Wednesday, but you can't run it until 9 a.m. on Friday. Now, a best practice is to make sure you have their commitment to that embargo before you just send them something that says embargo at the top. Oftentimes, companies will do an embargo if they're a big enough deal like Apple or Nike or something like that, where they want to do the intent is really to do a favor for the journalists so they're not caught off guard on Friday morning when they're planning on going to a golf tournament or something like that, or heading on a long weekend. And their biggest beat that they cover is about to drop some serious knowledge or some serious content, and they don't want to be blindsided by it. Or maybe it's an embargo because they know the journalist is going to need time to prepare for the story and to do their research and due diligence. The other option is called an advance, and it's very similar to an embargo. The idea is saying, hey, I'm giving this to you ahead of time, but you can't cover it until an agreed upon timeline. Now, you might give an embargo or an advance to multiple journalists ahead of time. And the problem is if one of them breaks the line or breaks the agreement, then the other ones are going to follow just like dominoes falling. And we've seen that happen firsthand when, we have a story that we have agreed to in advance or an embargo with journalists, and then some third party starts talking about it out of turn or unauthorized to another outlet. And once it's out there, then they all, kind of jump on it. The other thing I want to clarify is the exclusive. The exclusive is probably one of the most poorly used techniques. And so an exclusive means exactly that. Like, I'm giving you this exclusively. No one else has it, right? It's not an advance, it's an exclusive. Now, you might say, there's different ways to offer an exclusive, but if you're going to do an exclusive, you better be very crystal clear to all the parties involved what you mean by an exclusive. So you could say you are the exclusive daily newspaper receiving this story. And you could say somewhere else, you're the exclusive network TV news show that's receiving this, right? You could say you are the exclusive industry vertical or industry trade outlet getting this, or you are the exclusive consumer enthusiast website or magazine getting a copy of this. That's the kind of language you need to use when you're offering an exclusive. But a key pro tip here is then you need to add something else. If you're not interested in covering this, I need to know within blank amount of time. And I recommend 48 hours. That gives the reporter, the journalist, the editor, the producer, the contact you've made enough time to run it through their process and their channels to see if they even want it. Because nothing's worse than giving an outlet an exclusive and they just end up saying no thank you, and you could have given it to another outlet. So I recommend 48 hours. And so you might give it to them, saying, hey, you can't cover this for 48 hours, but I'm giving it to you exclusively. If you're not interested, let me know as soon as possible so I can, offer it somewhere else. But the key word to all of this is if you're offering something exclusive, then it needs to be told as being exclusive, because you don't want any assumptions to happen there. Another question is the press release dead? The answer is absolutely no. But you don't need a press release to get media coverage. And I think that's often misunderstood. We've got clients who say, hey, we really want to do a press release about this. And our sniff test is really that's more of a media pitch than it is a news release. And most clients, most executives, most business professionals have no idea that there's even a difference. I've even met PR people that don't seem to understand the difference. So a news release or a press release is an official company document that you put out there. It's more formal. Can often be posted to a newswire. It can often be submitted to news outlets who may then decide to copy and paste it and run it as is. Without writing it. They will most definitely edit it. They will edit it for AP style. They will edit it for inverted pyramid. They will edit it to their news standards and style of their particular outlet. And meanwhile, a media pitch is a much less formal, but yet still feels official and still can be used to generate a news story. So if you have a news release, you might want to attach that to your pitch. You might want to offer it as a follow-up to your pitch. But a pitch is a teaser. A pitch is I'm asking you to cover this topic. By the way, I've pasted the news release below. I've attached the news release. I can provide a news release, whatever you might say. But again, some of our best media coverage has come from not having a media pitch or not having a news release at all, because a news release starts to trigger the ideas of, okay, everybody else is getting this. Okay, you're sending this to a bunch of people. There's not an exclusive. There's not a unique angle here. Although you can find and they can find, and you can point them to a unique angle. I've seen some companies do a really good job with this where, they have a news announcement and they go to outlet number 1 with one angle, outlet number 2 with a different angle, and outlet number 3 with an even, more unique angle. And that might just be who you give them access to within the organization. Maybe it's the photos you share. Maybe it's, the tour that you give. But you should know that each outlet is ultimately looking for a unique angle that they can cover. I've another question here is, I'm pitching a local news story, and I want to have as many local TV stations come and cover it as possible. Do I need to tell them that another TV station is covering it? In my opinion, news, just like your business, is highly competitive. And so while the journalists might want to know the competitive intelligence of who else is covering it, my position, and some may disagree with this, my position is if they don't ask you who else is covering it, I would not volunteer it. I also wouldn't necessarily, unless you think it would work, volunteer to say, well, Channel 5 is coming out to cover this tomorrow, so you might want to come Channel 2 and cover it today. That feels a little underhanded to Channel 5, who was an early commitment to your story. And it feels to me like you're giving Channel 2 a little bit of an unfair advantage. Now, you may have a strategic reason for doing that. You might not like Channel 5 or prefer Channel 5, or more importantly, perhaps your key audience is involved in Channel 2. But I've done this a dozen times, 100 times in my career. You have one journalist coming in one door and another journalist going out the back door, kind of thing. You don't send them out the back door for unethical reasons. You just do it to protect the competitive nature of the business. Now, the news business it depends on the market you're in, geographically as well as industry. But I have seen firsthand where journalists are cooperating more than I've ever seen them cooperate before. That was something we started seeing, around 2005 and 6, in the era of social media and collaborative media and things like that. But, I've seen rival news shows, news stations, news channels, help carry equipment for another news station or help with wardrobe adjustments for each other. And I love that. I love seeing that. I think life's too short to have that level of competition where you don't do that. But at the end of the day, it's all about preserving the long-term relationship. So I would never lie or mislead, but I would also safeguard confidences, and I wouldn't give away confidential or competitive information, kind of thing. Another question or kind of suggestion here is the idea of, using B-roll and providing video footage. So highly recommend providing B-roll if you have it. If we went back to our process here, which I didn't go into great detail about intentionally, but you'll see step 7 here with our process is visual. We highly recommend that you always pre-identify a visual to go with any news story you are pitching, because journalists tell us that they spend more time tracking down I'll get to your question. Tracking down a photo for a news story than they do actually reporting and writing that news story, which has got to be highly annoying for them to have to spend that much time. And they tell us they get penalized for missing a deadline if they don't submit with a photo. Some software prevents them from submitting their deadline until they have an authentic photo to use. So if you can procure and provide a custom photo, excuse me, a photo for that reporter, they're going to like you, trust you, and want to do more things with you. So always try to track down a visual first. Can you use stock photography? No, you really can't. And if you do, you must disclose upfront that you're using stock photography, or you're providing stock photography. But also, if you're providing it, you better make sure you've got the license to allow them to be able to use it. When is the best time to pitch media? The best time to pitch media is really when you have a story that's newsworthy and interesting. Now, would I send it to them on a Saturday or Sunday? No, unless you know they are working the weekend beat, they're working the weekend desk. Their news outlet is covering stories 7 days a week, 24/7. Then yeah, maybe. Weekends are oftentimes the slower time to get coverage, depending on the market or the niche or the vertical that you're approaching. Research shows, as you might imagine, that Monday morning is not ideal, that Friday afternoon is not ideal. But I can also tell you I've pitched stories on both of those occasions that have worked because they were newsworthy enough and they were interesting enough to the media outlets audience, not just that they were interesting to our particular client. Now, one game you can play is you can wait for big news to break, some sort of breaking news, and maybe something that happens on a Friday afternoon. And that's when you can kind of insert a news story that you've got to disclose, either due to, regulatory reasons, or perhaps that you are a publicly traded company, for example. And so those are often good times to share that content, is in the midst of a media storm or a big crisis or something where the media's attention is diverted, like election day or something like that. Is there best time to pitch? Yes. If you'll find, I don't have it memorized right now, but I want to say it was probably Tuesday mornings or Wednesday mornings or something like that. But we did a recent podcast episode on top of PR with Linda from Muckrack. And if you go find that episode, I think we lead with that as like the cold opening of that episode. So that'll be right there. And all that. We also have a webinar we've done a couple years ago, maybe several years ago now. It's called Confessions of a CNN Producer, where I walk you through several things that a CNN producer shared with me. I know CNN is, not as desirable as it once was many years ago, but it's still a highly credible news outlet that people pay an awful lot of attention to. Okay, wrapping up. If there are any more questions, please submit those. But I want to thank you for attending today. I want to let you know that we're available at axiapr.com/AMA. Ask me anything. We're available at axiapr.com/webinars for more content like this. We're available at axiapr.com/apply if you'd like to do a free strategy session with us. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have a very popular podcast called On Top of PR, and you can find that at ontopofpr.com. Again, thank you for tuning in. And if there's anything I can do to be helpful for you, please let me know. Otherwise, we appreciate the opportunity to help you with media relations for earned media coverage. Be well.